Process Trust in 1984. The NBA abandons its long-standing coin flip system for determining the top draft pick and replaces it with a weighted lottery. The shift comes after growing evidence that teams are deliberately losing games to improve their odds in the draft. The most visible case involves the Houston Rockets, who dropped 14 of their final 17 games during the 1983-84 season. Despite having a playoff-caliber roster, their slide secures them a favorable position in the coin flip, which they win, allowing them to select 7-foot center Hakeem Olajuwon first overall. The incident sparks public criticism and internal concern that the system rewards failure rather than competition. League officials respond by creating an envelope-based draft lottery intended to reduce incentives for late-season losing. Each non-playoff team receives an equal chance at the top pick, a format designed to make tanking statistically inefficient. Commissioner David Stern emphasizes that the goal is to discourage losing for draft position and preserve the league's integrity amid growing television interest. The first lottery, held in 1985, marks a new phase in the NBA's approach to competitive balance. The Houston controversy and Olajuwon's eventual success sets the foundation for decades of tension between performance and draft strategy, the same tension that will later define modern rebuilds like Philadelphia's Sixers 73, the 1970-73 Philadelphia 76ers closed the season with a 9-73 record, the worst mark in NBA history. They lose 20 straight games twice in the same campaign, a level of futility unseen before or since. Offensively, they failed to reach 100 points in 67 of their 82 contests, averaging just 90 points per game in a league that averages over 105. The roster, built around Fred Carter's 20.0 points per night, lacks both depth and efficiency, shooting barely 40% from the field. Attendance at the Spectrum falls below 5,000 per game by February, reflecting fan disillusionment with a team viewed as fundamentally uncompetitive. Head coach Roy Rubin, hired from the college ranks with no prior NBA experience, lasts only 51 games before ownership replaces him with Kevin Lowry. The team finishes the season losing 58 of its final 60 games, prompting front office promises of a full rebuild through the draft. Philadelphia's collapse becomes a cautionary tale within league offices, demonstrating how an unchecked incentive structure can erode competition. The 9-73 record stands as the benchmark for every future discussion on intentional losing and remains the statistical reference point for all subsequent tanking eras. The league's quiet discomfort with that precedent begins shaping draft policy through the late 1970s, laying groundwork for reform debates that resurfaced in 1984. Celtics 97, the 1996-97 Boston Celtics entered the season openly rebuilding, with the franchise eyeing the upcoming draft's consensus no. One prospect, Tim Duncan of Wake Forest. Under new head coach and team president Rick Pitino, Boston fields one of the youngest rosters in the league, averaging just 24.6 years of age. The team loses 13 straight games to close the season, finishing at 15-67, its worst record since joining the NBA in 1946. Their offense ranks 26th out of 29 teams, producing just 90.9 points per game, while opponents shoot over 47% from the field. Fans and media quickly label the campaign the Tim Duncan sweepstakes, suspecting that management's priority is long-term positioning rather than short-term wins. When the draft lottery arrives, Boston holds the best combined odds at the top pick, thanks to both its own record and an additional selection via trade. Despite that statistical advantage, the ping-pong balls fall to the San Antonio Spurs, who land Duncan and pair him with David Robinson to form a front court that wins 5 championships. Over the next 2 decades, Pitino, denied the generational big man his rebuild was designed around, delivers a now infamous press conference in 2000, declaring, "Larry Bird isn't walking through that door." The failed tank leaves Boston with no cornerstone and resets its rebuild for another half-decade. The Duncan miss also prompts renewed debate around the lottery's randomness, setting the stage for reform discussions that resurfaced after Cleveland's improbable wins in 2003 and 2014. CAVS 03. By the 2000-03 season, LeBron James has become a national phenomenon before even entering the NBA. His high school games at St. Vincent St. Mary air on ESPN, and scouts label him a can't-miss generational prospect. Meanwhile, the Cleveland Cavaliers enter a full collapse, trading away all-star guard Andre Miller and finishing 17-65 worst in the Eastern Conference. Their January stretch includes a 15-game losing streak, and attendance at Gund Arena falls to under 12,000 per game. The team's net rating of -8.6 ranks 28th out of 29, signaling one of the least competitive rosters in franchise history. Cleveland's local media begins calling the season the race for LeBron, with fans more focused on lottery odds than final scores. When the 2003 draft lottery arrives, Cleveland holds a 20.5% chance at the top pick, narrowly ahead of Memphis. The ping-pong balls fall in their favor, awarding them the No. 1 selection and delivering LeBron James to his hometown franchise. His rookie debut in October 2003 instantly transforms the team's outlook. Ticket sales double within weeks, and the Cavaliers' national television appearances increase fivefold. LeBron averages 20.9 points, 5.9 assists, and 5.5 rebounds as a 19-year-old, validating the hype in any one of the league's most blatant tank seasons with unprecedented commercial success. Cleveland's strategic collapse becomes the modern example of how short-term losing can yield transformative results, a pattern that future franchises, most notably Philadelphia, will later study and replicate. Bulls 08. The 2007-08 Chicago Bulls enter the season with playoff expectations, but quickly unravel amid locker room disputes and inconsistent coaching. They finished 33-49, missing the postseason entirely and ranking 24th in offensive efficiency at 100.9 points per 100 possessions. When the regular season ends, Chicago holds just a 1.7% chance of winning the NBA draft lottery behind 13 other teams. Statistically, they face a 98.3% chance of not landing the top pick, making them an afterthought in pre-lottery projections. Yet, the improbable happens. The Bulls jump from 9th to 1st in the order, securing the No. 1 overall selection. The outcome triggers immediate speculation that the league benefited from a major market storyline, given the draft's top prospect grew up in Chicago. Derrick Rose, a 19-year-old guard from Englewood and the University of Memphis, becomes the face of the franchise overnight. His rookie season validates the hype. He averages 16.8 points and 6.3 assists per game, while leading the Bulls to a 41-41 record and a playoff berth. Rose earns Rookie of the Year honors and transforms the team's offense into a fast-paced attack, centered around his penetration and athleticism. Chicago's leap from lottery outsider to playoff team in 1 year reignites scrutiny of the lottery system itself. In response to widespread backlash and calls for transparency, the NBA later adjusts its lottery odds in 2019 to flatten the probabilities among the league's worst teams. The Bulls' 2008 miracle becomes the defining example of how randomness can reshape both a franchise and league policy. Spurs 97. The 1996-97 San Antonio Spurs begin the season with playoff expectations, but lose franchise cornerstone David Robinson to a broken foot after just 6 games. Without their All-NBA center, the team stumbles to a 3-15 start, ranking last in defensive efficiency at 109.5 points allowed per 100 possessions. Midway through the season, Robinson briefly returns, only to suffer a back injury that sidelines him again. The organization elects to shut him down for the remainder of the year, citing long-term health concerns, a decision that sparks widespread speculation about deliberate losing. General manager Greg Popovich dismisses head coach Bob Hill in December and takes over the bench himself, framing the move as an organizational reset. San Antonio finishes the season 20-62, their worst record since joining the NBA in 1976. The poor finish earns them the third-best odds in the upcoming draft lottery, which they win, securing the right to select Wake Forest senior Tim Duncan. The pairing of Duncan and a healthy Robinson immediately restores the Spurs' dominance. The team jumps to 56-26 the following year and captures the 1999 NBA championship just 2 seasons after their collapse. The turnaround fuels a long-running suspicion that the Spurs had managed one of the most calculated tank jobs in league history, maximizing short-term losses for a generational reward. The success of the Duncan era also reframes tanking as a potentially legitimate rebuild model, setting the philosophical stage for the process in Philadelphia more than a decade later. Sixers process. In 2013, general manager Sam Hinkie assumes control of the Philadelphia 76ers and initiates one of the most deliberate rebuilds in NBA history. His first major act is to trade all-star point guard Drew Holiday to New Orleans for the rights to Nerlens Noel and a future first-round pick. Over the next 2 years, Hinkie continues liquidating veterans including Evan Turner and Michael Carter Williams, in exchange for long-term draft assets. The Sixers' win totals collapsed from 34 in 2012-13 to 19, then 18, then 10 by 2015-16, marking 3 consecutive seasons below 20 victories. Because of this sustained decline, Hinkie frames losing as a means of maximizing lottery probability and preserving cap flexibility. The phrase "trust the process" emerges as a fan and media shorthand for Hinkie's long-view philosophy. Players such as Joel Embiid, drafted 3rd overall in 2014 despite injury risks, embodied the idea of sacrificing short-term performance for elite future value. Meanwhile, league officials and ownership groups expressed concern over Philadelphia's competitive integrity, prompting the NBA to install veteran executive Jerry Colangelo as an advisor in late 2015. Facing pressure from ownership and the league office, Hinkie resigns in April 2016 after submitting a 13-page letter defending data-driven rebuilding strategies and long-term asset management. His approach influences future front offices to weigh statistical probability over immediate results. Within 2 seasons, the core he assembled Embiid, Ben Simmons, and multiple first-round assets elevates Philadelphia back to playoff contention. The team's record jumps from 10 to 72 in 2016 to 50 to 30 in 2018, validating at least part of Hinkie's rationale. Yet the controversy surrounding those intentionally lean years reshapes NBA discourse on tanking and draft reform. The league responds by flattening lottery odds in 2019, directly limiting the incentive structure that fueled Hinkie's plan. The backlash against the process paves the way for the NBA's next great experiment in controlled losing the Phoenix Suns. Mid-decade rebuild. Suns 19 in 2019. The Phoenix Suns close another rebuilding year with a 24-58 record. Their 4th straight season below 30 wins. Despite the losing, 22-year-old Devin Booker delivers one of the decade's most remarkable scoring feats, 70 points in a single game against Boston, the highest total by any player since Kobe Bryant's 81 in 2006. Booker averages 26.6 points that season, but the team's defensive rating ranks 29th out of 30, and their point differential of -9.3 per game signals structural imbalance. The Suns lose 17 consecutive games between January and March, matching the second longest streak in franchise history. Because of that slide, home crowds begin chanting Zion during blowout losses, referencing Duke freshman Zion Williamson, the presumed top draft prize. Phoenix's front office, led by general manager James Jones, faces an altered incentive landscape as the NBA introduces lottery reform that year. The new system flattens the odds, giving the 3 worst teams equal 14% chances at the no. 1 pick, thereby penalizing extreme tanking. The Suns' record positions them 5th worst, but the reform drops their lottery result to 6th overall, removing them from contention for Zion Williamson or Yao Morant. The pick ultimately becomes Jarrett Culver, later traded to Minnesota, extending Phoenix's long search for a franchise co-star beside Booker. In practical terms, their strategic losses failed to produce proportional draft rewards. By media day that fall, Booker's frustration becomes visible as he emphasizes his readiness to start winning now. The franchise shifts from accumulation to acceleration, adding veterans like Ricky Rubio and later Chris Paul. The organizational pivot reflects a broader league shift after years of tanking experiments. Teams begin prioritizing competitive growth over prolonged rebuilds. The Suns' failed pursuit of lottery success directly precedes their rapid rise, culminating in a finals appearance 2 years later. That turnaround marks the final beat before the NBA's next era of balance between player development and competitive integrity. Rockets 21. The 2020-21 Houston Rockets begin their season under crisis conditions. James Harden, the league's 3-time scoring champion, averages 24.8 points through 8 games, but demands a trade after a turbulent offseason. His departure to Brooklyn in January signals the official collapse of Houston's 8-year playoff streak, a period that included 50-win seasons and a 65-win peak in 2018. Without Harden, the team's offense plummets from 117.8 to 107.8 points per 100 possessions, ranking near the bottom of the league. The roster's instability, 29 different starting lineups in 72 games, makes sustained performance impossible. By March, the team endures a 20-game losing streak, the longest in franchise history and tied for the 8th longest in NBA records. Head coach Stephen Silas, in his first season, delivers an emotional post-game press conference after their 20th loss, visibly acknowledging the strain of rebuilding amid chaos. Houston finishes the year at 17-55, its worst record since 1983. With a -9 point-for-point differential and league-low offensive efficiency, the front office, led by Raphael Stone, frames the collapse as an opportunity to reset around youth and flexibility. The organization's stated goal shifts from contention to controlled regression. That regression pays a measured dividend when the Rockets secure the pick in the 2021 draft, selecting Jalen Green, a 19-year-old guard from the G League Ignite program who averages 17.3 points in his debut season. The selection formalizes Houston's entry into a full rebuild, emphasizing pace, spacing, and player development over wins. Within 2 years, the roster's average age drops below 24, marking one of the youngest cores in the league. The Harden exit thus initiates both the franchise's steepest fall and the structural foundation for its eventual renewal, an outcome that contrasts sharply with earlier tanking eras, driven solely by chance. Magic 13. The 2012-13 Orlando Magic opened their first season without Dwight Howard since 2004 and immediately entered full-scale reconstruction. Under new head coach Jake Vaughn, the youngest coach in the league at 37, Orlando fields a roster without a single All-Star. The team's offensive rating drops to 99 points per 100 possessions, ranking 27th, and they lose 60 to games worst in the NBA. Center Nikola Vucevic, acquired from Philadelphia in the Howard trade, provides the lone statistical anchor, averaging 13.1 rebounds per game, but only 13.1 points. The rest of the roster fails to produce consistent scoring, with no player averaging over 17 points. Orlando's youth experiment yields development time, but no tangible success. The franchise plays 12 rookies or second-year players during the season, the most of any team, leading to frequent lineup changes and uneven chemistry. Because of the league's weighted lottery system, the Magic enter with the best odds for the top pick 25%, but drop to second overall. After the drawing, that outcome prevents them from selecting Kansas freshman Ben McClemmer or consensus no. One choice Anthony Bennett, instead pivoting to Indiana guard Victor Oladipo at no. 2. At the time, Giannis Antetokounmpo is a little-known prospect ranked outside most top 10 mock drafts. Oladipo earns All-Rookie First-Team honors in 2014, averaging 13.8 points and 4.1 assists. But the franchise remains adrift without a central superstar. The front office's attempt to rebuild through draft consistency instead produces incremental improvement, followed by years of stagnation. Meanwhile, Giannis' emergence in Milwaukee reframes Orlando's 2013 draft as one of the league's missed opportunities. The Magic's early 2010s rebuild becomes a case study in how tanking guarantees only odds not outcomes and sets up the league's next adjustments to lottery reform. Knicks 15. The 2014-15 New York Knicks record only 17 wins, the second worst total in franchise history and their lowest since the 1960-63 season. President Phil Jackson, hired in March 2014 to modernize the roster, authorizes a full tear-down after a 5-36 start. Carmelo Anthony, the team's leading scorer at 24 points per game, undergoes knee surgery in February and is shut down for the remaining 42 contests. Without him, the Knicks averaged just 91.9 points per game last in the league and ranked 30th in offensive rating. Attendance at Madison Square Garden remains strong, averaging 19,812 fans per game. But fan sentiment turned sharply against the front office by midseason. Jackson commits to a long-term rebuild built around draft capital rather than veteran contracts. The Knicks finish tied with Minnesota in the standings, but lose a coin toss that determines draft lottery position, giving the Timberwolves slightly better odds. When the lottery finalizes, New York drops from the projected second pick to fourth overall, a 2-spot slide. That removes both Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell from their board. On June 25, 2015, the Knicks select Latvian forward Kristaps Porzingis at no. 4, a 7'3" inches prospect few fans recognize. The reaction inside Barclays Center is immediate. Sustained boos echo as cameras capture angry fans holding fire fill signs. Porzingis soon averages 14.3 points and 7.3 rebounds as a rookie, silencing some early criticism. But the franchise remains mired in instability. Jackson's triangle offense experiment yields no improvement, and the team cycles through to head coaches in 2 seasons. The 17-65 record of 2015 officially launches a decade-long rebuilding phase that tests fan loyalty and patience. The Porzingis pick, though mocked at first, becomes the rare success story from one of the league's most public tanking efforts, before eventually leading to another reset when he's traded in 2019. Warriors 21. The 2020-21 Golden State Warriors ended the season already weakened by injury. Before a single game is played, Klay Thompson, the franchise's five-time All-Star shooting guard, tears his right Achilles tendon during an offseason workout in November 2020. Following a missed year for an ACL injury, the loss removes a career 41.9% three-point shooter from the league's most efficient backcourt. Stephen Curry, returning from his own fractured hand suffered in 2019, re-injures himself early in the season and misses 60 of the 75 games played. Steve Kerr's roster, built around fringe contributors and developmental players, struggles to maintain spacing or defensive consistency. The team starts for .217 and never climbs above .300 for the remainder of the season. By March, Golden State sits last in the Western Conference standings with a 15-50 record, their worst finish since 2001. The only consistent bright spot is rookie guard Jordan Poole, who posts 8.8 points per game but shoots under 30% from the field. General Manager Bob Myers opts to prioritize long-term recovery over short-term wins, limiting veteran minutes and leaning on rookies for developmental reps. The result of that downturn is a rare lottery opportunity for a dynasty-level franchise. The Warriors secure the second overall pick in the 2020 NBA Draft and select 7'0" center James Wiseman from Memphis. Though his rookie season averages of 11.5 points and 5.8 rebounds suggest promise, his development is uneven due to injuries and limited minutes. The team's poor record, however, positions them for a full rebound the following year. With Curry and Thompson finally healthy, Golden State climbs back to a 53-29 record and wins the 2022 NBA championship, turning the brief collapse of 2021 into a strategic bridge between dynastic eras. Pistons 24. The 2023-20 for Detroit Pistons end of the season, with cautious optimism built around Cade Cunningham, the 6'6" guard drafted first overall in 2021. Cunningham posts career highs of 20.7 points and 7.5 assists per game, showing improved efficiency and leadership. Yet his production is surrounded by inconsistency and inexperience. Detroit's rotation includes 6 players aged 22 or younger, and their defensive rating ranks 28th in the league. By mid-December, injuries and poor spacing pushed the team into freefall. The Pistons lose 28 consecutive games between October 30th and December 30th, the longest single-season losing streak in franchise history, at one short of the all-time NBA record. Head coach Monty Williams, signed to a 6-year, $78.5 million contract, the richest in league history for a coach, struggles to stabilize rotations amid constant roster turnover. Fans at Little Caesars Arena began chanting "Fire Monty" as early as February, reflecting frustration with both strategy and effort. The Pistons finished the season at 14-68, their fewest wins since 1980, and post a point differential of -10.3 per game. Cunningham's steady numbers offer the only consistent sign of progress, while Jaden Ivey and Yelendern show flashes that fail to translate into wins. Despite securing the NBA's worst record, Detroit's lottery odds yield the 5th overall pick under the 14% flat odds system, introduced in 2019. The result marks the second straight year the team falls multiple spots below expectation, reigniting debate about the fairness of the draft lottery. Commissioner Adam Silver publicly defends the process, calling it a necessary buffer against intentional losing. The Pistons' collapse therefore becomes both a statistical anomaly and a test case for how much the lottery reform truly discourages tanking, setting the stage for renewed scrutiny of the league's incentive structure. CAVS 11 James 2010 exit to Miami ends Cleveland's 127-game sellout streak and erases nearly 60% of their total scoring from the prior season. Without their 4-time MVP, the Cavaliers collapsed to a 26-game losing streak between December and February, tying the longest in NBA history at the time. Attendance drops by over 20%, and local broadcasts lose half their viewership, reflecting a market in freefall. Head coach Byron Scott replaces Mike Brown, but inherits a roster whose leading scorer, Anton Jamison, averages only 18 points per game at age 34. The front office, led by Chris Grant, begins offloading veterans to reset the salary cap structure. By February, Cleveland trades Mo Williams and Jamario Moon to the Clippers for Baron Davis and an unprotected 2011 first-round pick, signaling a full rebuild. The Cavaliers finished 19-63, ranking last in offensive rating at 101.3 points per 100 possessions, a steep drop from 112.4 with James. Despite the poor record, the locker room treats the season as a transitional reset rather than open revolt. Their struggles, though, create historic draft positioning, the very goal of a controlled tank. At the 2011 draft lottery, Cleveland's 0.8% odds miraculously yield the first overall pick. Leapfrogging 8 teams, the pick, initially belonging to the Clippers, becomes the franchise's first major post-LeBron break. With it, the Cavaliers select Duke guard Kyrie Irving, whose 18.5-point rookie average reopens a credible timeline for contention. The sequence from 26 straight losses to improbable lottery victories cements one of the most deliberate and statistically lucky rebuilds in NBA history. The franchise's approach foreshadows later tanking eras, setting up comparisons to Philadelphia's process, Mavs 18 by February 2018. Dallas sits at 18-40, and owner Mark Cuban publicly admits that losing is our best option, a statement that earns him a $600,000 league fine. The comment confirms what most observers already recognize. The Mavericks, long defined by playoff consistency, are now prioritizing lottery positioning. Dirk Nowitzki, then 39, appears in only 77 games and averages 24 minutes per night, the fewest of his career, signaling an organizational shift toward youth development. Rookie Dennis Smith Jr. leads the team in usage, but posts just 39% shooting, a reflection of deliberate experimentation over efficiency. Head coach Rick Carlisle rotates 25 different starting lineups, testing fringe players as the season slips toward the bottom of the standings. The Mavericks finished 20-58, their worst record since 1998, ranking 27th in offensive efficiency and 29th in pace. Yet the losses secure strategic positioning. Dallas lands the No. 5 pick in the 2018 NBA draft, precisely within reach of the top international prospect. On draft night, general manager Donnie Nelson trades that pick to Atlanta for the rights to Luka Doncic, who had averaged 14.5 points and 4.6 assists in Spain's Liga ACB. The move, completed minutes after selection, redefines the franchise's post-Dirk trajectory. Cuban later calls the decision the only tank worth it, acknowledging that one season of managed decline delivered a decade's worth of future relevance. Doncic wins Rookie of the Year in 2019 and averages 21 points per game, immediately validating the risk. The franchise's reputation, once tied to a veteran core, now anchors around a 19-year-old cornerstone who transforms the team's offensive identity. The success of this controlled tank contrasts sharply with earlier failed rebuilds and sets the stage for a new era of data-driven franchise resets. Lakers 16, the 2015-16 Lakers opened the season under head coach Byron Scott with one clear narrative: Kobe Bryant as 20th and final year in the league. Every road game becomes a tribute stop, overshadowing the team's competitive results. Bryant averages 17.6 points on 35.8% shooting, his lowest efficiency since 1998. But his farewell tour drives attendance and revenue even as losses mount. The Lakers finished 17-65, the third worst record in franchise history, ranking last in field goal percentage and defensive rating. Rookie D'Angelo Russell and second-year forward Julius Randle show flashes of potential, yet their development is secondary to Kobe's nightly send-offs. The front office accepts the short-term decline as a means to preserve draft positioning. In a deep lottery year, with the second overall pick, Los Angeles selects Brandon Ingram from Duke, a 6'9" forward who averaged 17.3 points as a freshman. The move confirms a full youth rebuild following Bryant's retirement. Byron Scott is dismissed the day after the season finale, replaced by Luke Walton, whose pace and space system promises modernization after years of half-court stagnation. The Lakers' statistical collapse dead last in assists, and three-point percentage makes the transition necessary. In early 2017, Magic Johnson joins the front office as president of basketball operations, marking a decisive structural reset from the post-Kobe vacuum. His arrival signals ownership's intent to restore competitiveness through both player development and cap flexibility. The 17-65 campaign, though historically poor, clears veteran contracts and creates space for a long-term rebuild. The foundation laid in 2016 positions the franchise to pursue its next era of star power and sets the conditions for LeBron James' arrival 2 years later. Timberwolves 10. Minnesota enters the 2009-10 season still recovering from the 2007 trade. That sent Kevin Garnett to Boston for a package of young players and draft picks. Under new general manager David Kahn, the front office commits to a full rebuild centered on rookie guards Ricky Rubio and Johnny Flynn, both selected in the 2009 draft within 5 minutes of each other. Rubio, chosen 5th overall, remains overseas with FC Barcelona, while Flynn, the 6th pick, averages 13.5 points as a starter. The decision to pass on Stephen Curry, taken immediately afterward at No. 7 by Golden State, becomes one of the most scrutinized moves of the era. The roster featuring Al Jefferson and Kevin Love struggles to balance scoring and defense, ranking 29th in net rating. A 15-game losing streak across January and February 2010 eliminates any chance of midseason recovery. The team finishes 15-67, matching the lowest win total in franchise history and posting the league's worst defensive efficiency. Head coach Kurt Rambis experiments with a triangle offense unsuited to the personnel, and Minnesota records the slowest pace in the Western Conference. Attendance drops below 15,000 per game, reflecting fan frustration with management's direction. Kahn insists the rebuild is ahead of schedule, but the numbers suggest otherwise. The Wolves closed the season ranked last in three-point percentage and turnovers per possession, symptoms of systemic inexperience. The consequences extend far beyond a single season. Flynn plays just 2 more years in the league, while Rubio delays his NBA debut until 2011. Minnesota's repeated lottery appearances failed to produce a playoff berth for over a decade, making the Curry miss emblematic of broader organizational misjudgment. The 15-67 collapse cements the franchise's reputation for developmental inefficiency and sets the stage for years of stalled rebuilding before Karl-Anthony Towns' arrival in 2015. Hornets 12. The 2011-12 New Orleans Hornets begin the season without their franchise cornerstone. Chris Paul, a 6-time All-Star and team leader in assists at 9.8 per game the prior year, is traded to the Los Angeles Clippers in December 2011 after a block deal to the Lakers. Triggers public backlash. The team, temporarily owned by the NBA due to financial instability, receives Eric Gordon, Chris Kaman, and draft assets in return. Gordon plays only 9 games due to a knee injury, removing the roster's only proven scorer. Head coach Monty Williams cycles through 20 starting lineups during a lockout-shortened 66-game schedule. The result, a 7-59 record, translating to a 106 win percentage, the lowest in NBA history. Offensively, New Orleans ranks dead last in scoring at 89.6 points per game, while defensive rating slides to 28th out of 30 teams. Attendance drops below 15,000 per night for the first time since 2007, reflecting widespread disinterest during a season many view as a deliberate reset. The narrative around the league shifts from rebuilding to strategic bottoming out. Despite the losing, a growing storyline dominates sports media: the upcoming 2012 draft, featuring Kentucky's 6'10" shot blocker Anthony Davis, who leads the NCAA with 4.7 blocks per game. The Hornets' record effectively positions them as frontrunners for the pick. When the lottery occurs in May, New Orleans wins the No. 1 selection despite owning just a 13.7% chance. Commissioner David Stern faces scrutiny for the optics, since the NBA itself had owned the Hornets until April, only weeks before the drawing. Conspiracy theories circulate, but the result stands. The Hornets select Davis first overall, launching a new era built on interior defense and elite athleticism. The 7-59 collapse, viewed in hindsight, becomes the ultimate example of a historically bad season yielding generational talent and sets the precedent for every tank for a star narrative that follows. Final takeaway: since the introduction of the draft lottery in 1985, at least 23 NBA teams have faced public or internal accusations of intentional losing. The logic remains simple: a lost season can become an asset when it leads to a league draft position. But the league continually adjusts the system to counter that incentive. The lottery odds have been restructured 3 separate times, first in 1990 to flatten the distribution, again in 1994 after the infamous Sixers tank, and most recently in 2019 when the top 3 teams' odds were equalized at 14%. Each revision seeks to reduce the payoff of bottoming out while preserving the illusion of randomness. By 2018, the league takes a harder stance. The Dallas Mavericks and Chicago Bulls receive formal warnings for resting healthy players, and the NBA introduces explicit anti-tanking fines that can reach $600,000 per violation. In parallel, data from Team Performance Analytics shows that top overall picks since 2000 have improved their Teams win rate by an average of 38% within 3 seasons. That figure keeps front offices invested in the long game, even as the punishment risk rises. Tanking, in essence, becomes a calculated gamble between short-term embarrassment and long-term profit. Despite policy changes, statistical patterns hold steady. Teams finishing in the bottom 5 of the standings still record a 50% probability of reaching the playoffs within 4 years, compared to 29% for mid-tier teams. The modern NBA may dress its rebuilds in softer language, player development, cap flexibility, timeline alignment, but the underlying economics haven't changed. Losing strategically still works often enough to justify the pain, and until the lottery removes uncertainty altogether, the incentive to tank will remain a permanent feature of the league's evolution.